Hello, everyone. It is Stephanie Rising with The Rising Effect. It is Ask Me Anything, and this time it is with the lovely and talented Todd Jarvis, whose attorney brain we get to pick for free, and I thank you, Todd.
Oh, thank you. This will be great.
Please take a minute and just introduce yourself and what areas of practice that you like to focus on before we jump in with our critical questions.
Yeah, fantastic. So, Todd Jarvis, I'm an attorney, been practicing in the Tucson area for about 10 years. I'm licensed in Utah and Arizona. So I work with primarily business owners and also families in both Utah and Arizona, helping to support them in their businesses from startup funding through through scaling and onto the exiting their businesses, succession planning and exiting. And then also work with families on estate planning. That was kind of came out of working with business owners, seeing how important the estate plan was part of their business plan. And of course, I just supported families who are not business owners with their estate planning as well.
Yeah, and I love that you take such a holistic approach. And I really think, regardless of whether a business is quote unquote family owned, so many small businesses function in a familial way. There's a familial dynamic to it, and it's really good to have representation that understands that. Plus, if it is a family owned business, what happens in terms of a succession plan and all that. We're going to get into that because I know you and I both have some gnarly stories about what happens when you don't plan in that fashion. So I'm going to jump in with my cheat sheet over here. We've got
Perfect.
5 questions we're going to cover today. And the first one is, a lot of legal housekeeping. It's mid-year, so we advertise this as this is a really great time to kind of get caught up on your legal housekeeping. And a lot of that falls into a big bucket called important, but not urgent. And then other urgent things tend to, kind of creep in and crowd out what really needs to be taken care of legally, and it just never happens. So is there a particular story that comes to your mind about a deferred legal decision, and what were the consequences of that deferment?
Yeah, so lots of stories. One that's just top of mind right now because it's pretty recent. Working with a young spouse. The spouse. So it's a young family,
Mhm.
and the husband is a business owner, and they were on vacation, and he actually ended up passing away. They had a couple young kids, so she came home from the vacation a widow, and unfortunately, they had kind of put off doing their succession planning. And to be honest, uh, this has happened a couple of times. I've worked with 2 or 3 young families in this situation, and so anyways, yeah, the results of this, of not having any planning in place, is the fact that we're relying on the court's plan, the state legislature's plan on how the succession is going to happen, and also the timing of that succession is going to be based upon the court schedule, because now we're going to have to go through the probate process in order to give the surviving spouse access to the business, to be able to run the business, give her access to the funds in the business, right? She doesn't have any legal and default ways to get into that business and start taking money out to support her family and to continue the business or sell the business without the court's permission. And that takes that court process takes about 4 or 5 months until you're through some of the initial delays that the court builds into the process. For the creditors, those delays are built in for creditors' behalfs, and yeah, so about 5 months later, she's finally able to get into that business and start running it. She's going to continue the business, which is great. But yeah, they're struggling there for a little bit trying to get access to those funds.
Have you ever seen a situation where, especially for companies that may be in a more financially fragile position, where something is not legally spelled out, it's forced to go through probate, and the amount of time it takes to go through probate effectively shuts the business down?
Yeah, definitely. Had another client, same thing, young couple, and there was just the timeliness of providing for the clients. It was a very service-based business. And by the time
Mhm.
the surviving spouse was able to get in and get control, the clients are gone. And
Oh,
the business had to just liquidate and shut down. They had a couple $100. And yeah, it was that was really tough.
okay. So we're definitely going to get into partnership agreements and later on, because this is something that really pains me, and I know it pains you as well, because we're both very intimately involved in our clients' businesses and how much of themselves that they put into their business. And it's catastrophic enough to lose a spouse or to lose a business partner who is probably a very good friend of yours. At that point, you're experiencing some kind of personal loss. And in addition to that, you're trying to navigate everything going on with the business. And all of that can be simplified if you do your legal homework. So this is just a big commercial for, please, if you have been thinking about taking action around getting your ducks in legal order, uh, please do it before the end of the year and don't make this another goal that you punt for another new year, right? So that line between personal and professional in a small business gets really blurry, which professionally can be very interesting, helping people navigate through that. What is something that every small business owner should understand about using their personal resources in their business?
Yeah, no, this is key because really what this comes down to is the fact that the limited liability part
Mhm.
of your limited liability company, your LLC or your corporation is centered around this topic of keeping your personal life and your personal assets and resources separate from your business resources and your business activities, right? If you can't prove that there's a clear line between your personal life and your business life, assets and resources, the court's going to ignore that line as well, right? If you can't see it, if you can't prove it's there, they're most likely going to ignore it. They call this
Sure.
piercing the corporate veil, right? So
Mhm.
you've set up this LLC or this corporation, in order to kind of create buckets in your life, right? You've got your business bucket over here, you got your personal bucket over here. In your personal bucket, you have your house, you have your personal bank accounts, you have your cars, you have all these different assets, right? And then over here in your business bucket, in your corporation or your LLC, you have bank accounts for the business for its operations, right? And then you might have real estate as well. You might have vehicles,
Mhm.
or you might, like me, you might just have bank accounts and some equipment and customer lists and stuff, right? Now, you want to make sure you're doing a good job of keeping those separate and the uses of those very documented, because that's what you're going to be able to use when you go to court, if you have to go to court, to prove that those buckets are separate, that there's no overlap there. And the documents that you're going to need are, bank statements showing that all of your business money was used to pay for business expenses. All
Mhm.
your personal money was used to pay for personal expenses, that there's no cross payment of expenses, and you're not using your
Mhm.
personal debit card to buy, copy paper for your business or pay some software expense for your business. Um, you can use your money as an owner from your business for your personal expenses. Say your rent's due, right? You got $1,200 due in rent this month, and you need some money from the company to do that. You can use the money as an owner. If you're a shareholder or you're an LLC, you can take a distribution from the company to your personal bank account to pay that in most cases, right? Yeah, you have to
Mhm.
look at your operating agreement and make sure that's all done. But in general, right? We're speaking generally here, you can take that money and pay it. But you want to follow that process. You take the money as a distribution, you put into your personal bank account. Now you pay the rent for your personal bank account. You're not shortcutting it by writing a check for rent from your business account.
Okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense. So what I'm going to repeat this back because I want to make sure when I represent this to my clients, I'm representing it accurately. So just because you have an LLC does not mean that you will be protected in court or not be held personally liable in court if it can be proved that you commingle funds and you've made your finances so muddy that if the court can't distinguish where the money is coming from, then all bets are off and everything is now vulnerable. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, yeah, exactly. That's what you should keep in mind 100%, because you just want to be able to have clear processes. Also with that, keeping documentation of corporate minutes, your annual meetings, electing. I know this sounds silly, especially when you're a single member LLC, right? I'm the only owner of my firm, but every year I elect myself as president, treasurer, and secretary of my LLC, and I document that so that I have a corporate book that I can say, hey, court, here it is. My law firm is separate. So
I
you want to,
have I have never done that. I
yeah,
filed my articles of organization. I have an LLC. I am declared the owner of that LLC, but I've never done an annual meeting with myself. So that's actually really good food for thought, that there should be some maybe annual accounting for,
yes.
what were your activities that year, what were your dominant uh streams of revenue. So like are you looking for like just the baseball highlights of
Yeah,
what
that's
happened with
exactly
your
right.
business and then sign off as the presiding officer and then that just goes in the file?
Exactly. And anytime you do something big of note, you open a line of credit, make sure you as an owner of the LLC is authorizing you as the president to go do that, right? A
Okay.
resolution. So these are some things that I do with a lot of my clients. They just, some of the services that I do is, pay me a couple $100 a year and I'll do all your books for you, right? Or something like that, right? So
Interesting.
there's just that kind of that keeping that maintenance there, showing that you have followed some of the formalities
Mhm.
um, to and that just helps bolster your argument that this business has been run as a business.
Right, you're treating your LLC as a true LLC and not, some exercise you were forced to go through.
Exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense. Um, all right, next question, and this kind of touches back on what we were talking about earlier. I've worked with partnerships who initially did not have a partnership agreement. I know you have as well. Often it's friends or very trusted colleagues, and they can't imagine anything going sideways between them. Why are partnerships agreements so important if things are so solid between the people creating the business together?
No, that is fantastic. Thank you for bringing this up, because this is key. I actually, it's interesting. End of last year, I was dealing with at least a handful of these all at once, and they
Mm,
were all from. And what I mean by handling a handful of these, it was like 4 or 5 business divorces
yeah,
that we were dealing with, and some of them had documentation in place and a plan in place. Some of them did not. Okay. So the important thing here, and they were all best of friends, right? Their families were basically families, right?
yeah.
And the key thing here, I think, to really keep in mind is, well, there's 2 key points I want to bring up. One is treat your business relationship as business relationships. And what I mean by that, and the fantastic thing about business relationships in my mind, is that it's completely acceptable to sit down with your business partner or your vendors or your clients, all those people you have relationships with in your business, and sit down and hammer out and write in writing, set in stone, or at least on paper,
Mhm.
digitally, your expectations of each other. That's
Yeah,
really what business agreements should be, and a contract should be approached as, hey, this is what you can expect from me. This is what I can expect from you in return. And then some language about what are we going to do if one of us fails to meet those expectations. And the thing here that you've brought up with partnership agreements and where you have such a strong relationship between the partners going in that they can't imagine anything going wrong.
Yeah.
Sure, maybe they can't imagine, and maybe neither of them will ever become an alcoholic or become lazy or disinterested in the business. They'll work really well together as business partners for however long they want to, and then they'll exit and sell, right? Maybe that's the truth. The thing is, though, is neither of those partners have control over a few of the situations that you can take care of in a partnership agreement. And those situations are disability. What if one of the partners becomes disabled? What if one of the partners becomes incapacitated? What if one of the partner's spouse files for divorce?
Yes.
So all of those pieces, those are good reasons to bring up with your partner. If you feel some friction or some hesitance to say, hey, partner, let's sit down and put a partnership agreement together. Bring those reasons up. Say it's because we can't control if one of us gets in a car accident and is disabled for 12 months, or is incapacitated permanently. We can't control whether one of our spouses is going to file for divorce and how we're going to handle that. Because especially in Arizona, there's common law, a common property, right? Community property rights that your spouses inherently have in your business. So.
Yeah, and I think, as you were talking, something else that came to my mind in terms of the assumptions that are made going into a partnership and like everything is going to be kumbaya permanently. You bring up a lot of good points around things that people don't have control over. And the other thing, like just that occurred to me from a coaching perspective, is sometimes people get into business with one another and they really haven't been tested under stress in a relationship. They're friends and they're colleagues, but money is a very emotionally charged issue, and nothing will breed resentment faster than not having clearly outlined expectations and feeling like one person is doing a disproportionate amount of the work. I think being in a partnership is like getting married. If you've never fought with your fiance, you might want to figure that dynamic out before you actually, get married. It's the same with the partnership. If you've never really been in a stressful situation, you've had to have a difficult conversation with somebody and work through a difficult scenario with them before, you're really not tested as partners. So don't take it for granted that everything is going to be smooth sailing for the duration of your partnership or your partnership. Have the agreement in place to help you when those moments inevitably crop up, and it will serve as a guide to help you get to the other side of it.
Yeah, I mean, most of us assume that a marriage relationship and the commitment between a married couple is one of the strongest commitments there is out there, right, in relationship worlds.
Yeah.
Why would we think our business relationship with our friend or family member is going to be any stronger than that? And we see divorces happen and marriages over finances. Why wouldn't business divorces happen maybe even more regularly or under less stress than a marriage? So yeah, definitely have those things. And to be honest, I've had experiences. One thing that's really beneficial about getting the partnership agreement done first up front, sitting down with an attorney. Reason why I say sit down with an attorney is because they're going to put you through some of these questions. They're going to ask sometimes I frame it as like the black hat, right? Let's pass around the black hat. Say, if Tony's wearing the black hat, is saying that, he chooses to, all of a sudden he becomes addicted to drugs, he's not showing up at work. What's happening? What are you guys doing now? What are the consequences of this? And I've had one, maybe two. I'm trying to think if it was two. It was close to two, but at least one I know for sure, where the partners decided not to go into business together just by having that conversation. Usually this conversation I have with people putting these partnership agreement, it usually takes a couple months. Like we're sitting down and we're hashing out, some big what ifs. I'm drafting up some wording and verbiage around that, sending it to them. Then they review it. We get on a call 2 weeks later and we hash through it again. And, we're trying to force them to have these thoughts and conversations. Like you said, maybe like even pretending to have these conflicts. And like I said, I've had at least one partnership decide not to go in business.
Which is awesome. That takes a lot of self-awareness and a lot of honesty to come to that conclusion. So whoever that was, I applaud them. And we've kind of identified, many examples of why people should seek out legal counsel as part of their decision-making process. So another question that I have for you is, what do you think stops people from getting a legal opinion when they need it most? Is it cost, or is there something else? And how would you reframe that objection?
Okay. There's a couple that I get that I understand people have. One is, just unfamiliarity with the process and intimidation or whatever that is. But I think cost really is kind of the root of a lot of it, is not knowing how much it's going to cost. And they assume it's going to be a lot. And I am not here to tell you that legal counsel is cheap, because good legal counsel is not exactly cheap, but it is affordable. And
Yeah.
and it's also what I'll say is a couple things on this. One, it is definitely cheaper to get it done up front than it is to try to clean it up on the back end. Okay. And there's actually the 30-30 rule is kind of what gets tossed around in the legal industry. It's basically business disputes, or I guess most disputes, legal disputes and litigation last about 30 months. They take about 30 months to resolve on average, and they cost about 30 times what it would have costed to deal with, to plan up front and to deal with up front. So if you're thinking putting a partnership agreement's expensive, maybe at $2,500 or $1,500 or whatever it ends up being, multiply that by 30.
Yeah.
And so it definitely can be well worth your time and money up front. Plus, one thing to watch for and to look for is an attorney that's willing to work with you on a flat rate basis, just because the billable hour can be scary, and who knows how much it's going to cost you. At least for sure how much the flat rate attorney is going to cost.
Yes, it makes it easier
And
to budget.
it does. You have a surety of cost. And, to be honest, it might sound more expensive. Like I said, if you get quoted $2,500 for a partnership agreement, or $1,500 for a partnership, or whatever it is, somewhere in there, right? That's usually the spread I see. That's going to be kind of a little bit of sticker shock compared to someone quoting you $300 an hour. You're thinking, oh, it's just going to take him 2 hours. He's got a form. He can just do this in 2 hours. That's only $500 or something, or $600.
Right.
You don't know though. You don't know, because like I said, most of this time we're having multiple phone calls. We're reviewing and redrafting to get this thing right. So if you're paying by the hour, a lot of times you are going to shortchange yourself by not communicating as much as you should with your attorney.
Yes.
And you're also, you might just hesitate to bring up points just to keep the cost down. But if, when I work with people and I do all flat rates, they know exactly what they're paying, and we can sit down and have a 90-minute strategy session, right? And they know it's not going to cost them anything extra. If I want to say, hey, I need to talk to your CPA to really hash this out with them, they're going to be okay with me talking to CPA, because they know it's not going to cost them anymore.
Yeah, they know the meter isn't running. And I think that does cause people a lot of anxiety. I mean, it's caused me anxiety when I've needed to use an attorney in the past, and they didn't work on flat rate. And being unfamiliar with what the attorney's process is, you have no sense of how much this is ultimately going to cost, which makes you feel that much more out of control about something that's really important to you as a business owner. And business owners tend to be control freaks. I'm one, I'll admit it. So flat rate is awesome. I think that's a great point that you made, that people become very reluctant to actually get the full scope of what it is that they need, because they are so concerned about how much everything costs. So that is a great point. That 30-30 rule, that made an impression. That's the first time I heard that, so I'm going to tuck that away for future use. Last question. What do you wish people better understood about how to really use an attorney and partner with an attorney to build a better business?
So, looking at an attorney as a strategic partner, I think, is important. Over the last 10 or 20 years, you know, attorneys, especially business attorneys and attorneys in a lot of industries, have really become commoditized. And I think we've done it to ourselves as attorneys, trying to compete with LegalZoom and the rocket lawyers of the world, right? Where we just feel like we're selling documents and we're just there to be document drafters. Like, you know, attorney is cost too much to just treat them to be just a document drafter for you. So, you know, being proactive with an attorney instead of reactive is key. You know, doing everything up front will cost less. You'll have more options in the beginning than you will on the in the middle or in the end as well. You know, if you're setting things up right, if you know that you want to build up a business and exit it in 10 or 15 years because you want to retire in 10 or 15 years, having that conversation about exiting your business at the beginning, 10 or 15 years in the, you know, ahead of time, will really benefit you to get things set up correctly and to really push you towards. And that's, I also encourage you, as you interview attorneys, see if they're willing, and if it's in their practice, to work strategically and proactively with their business owners. That if they are willing to, when they sit down with you, do they have a strategy session with you? Do they really dig into what your business is doing, how you're making money, what your plans are to making money? Are they asking to see your financials? Are they wanting to really understand who's involved, what your family dynamics are of all the partners? Are they really asking about your insurance and your finance and your tax considerations, and who are your other strategic partners? Are they willing to talk to your CPA and strategize with your CPA or your financial advisor? Or are you just calling them saying, I need an LLC, and they're saying, okay, it's $500 and we'll file your paperwork with the state and here it is? Or, you know, are they having that conversation with you to say, hey, you know, well, where are you going with this business? What's your plan? You know, how are you making money? What's your marketing? And, you know, they're not there necessarily saying, you need a business coach who's an attorney. No, that, you know, that's what Stephanie's for. She's your business coach, but your attorney should want to know what your plans are, those strategies that you're developing with your business coach. They should be wanting to be aware of those and aware of those. So the things that when they do draft documents for you, they are drafting them not just to be legally sound, but to push you towards those goals and to keep those goals in mind.
And I really appreciate that you brought that up, because even I've caught myself saying things like, oh, I bet he's got a template for that. You know, we could probably put something together very quickly. And so even I get caught in the mentality of, we need legal protections in place, but you forget that those protections aren't going to be as valuable unless you go through a discovery process. And like coaching, I think working with an attorney needs to be viewed as a collaborative process, and not, I'm here, I want to be here, and that can happen in one conversation or one step. Because I get frustrated when people treat coaches that way. It's like, I can only peel the onion like so much in one session, and then I'm going to think about it, and then I'm going to have more questions for you, and it's going to be an ongoing conversation. And I'm hearing that it's very similar for you as well.
Yeah, definitely.
This was great information, very illuminating. I learned no less than 5 new things in this conversation. Thank you very much, Todd, and thank you for always being so generous with your knowledge and your time. You're such a good resource for my clients, and I appreciate you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you too. And this has been great.
Good. All right, that wraps this up for this round of the AMA. We will have additional speakers throughout the rest of the year, so look for those posts and what topics are coming up, and we will see you next time. Bye, guys.